My throat is still a little bit painful, but I feel much better. I felt really tired and sick before, but now I'm okay. I just have a little bit of a sore throat, so I'm ready to teach you guys again. Okay, so all right, like I said, slight cough, but I feel better. I hope you started your midterm assignments. Um, you still have a couple weeks left, but you don't want to save this for the last minute. You should definitely know who you want to do your presentation about, and you should start to be researching it. Um, and then, if you're not sure about your person that you picked, you can send me an email and ask me, or send me a message in the Edwards system. You can say, I'm thinking about doing this person or these people. What do you think? And I'll say, yeah, that sounds good. You don't have to do that, but like if you're not sure, then it's okay. You can ask me. So I still decided to just not give you any extra assignments. I wanna. I'm sure you're stressed out. This is your first semester. You have a lot of things to do, so I don't wanna make this class too hard for you. So I'm not gonna give any extra assignments for now. I just want to give you enough time to finish your midterm assignment. So good luck with that. I hope you're not too stressed out with all your classes. Okay. So just a little bit of advice for the midterm assignment, in case you don't know what what to do. So first, I would spend the time thinking about who you want to talk about. So I've mentioned this a couple times already, but you have a few options. If you're interested in a certain time period, then you could, you know, search about missionaries from a certain time. Or if you're interested in a certain country, you could find the missionary things that went on there. If you want to focus on Korean people, that's fine. Um, Whatever. But this first step is just picking who you might want to do it on. The next step is see how easy it is to find information. So let's say you're interested in Spain, so you want to find, missionary, the first missionaries that were in Spain. But maybe the first missionaries in Spain were such a long time ago that you can't really find good information. So then you might want to just change the topic. Like if it's too hard for you to find good info on the person you picked, then just pick a different person. Like pick an easier one. Like you don't want to make this too hard for you. And I think one of the hardest parts could be finding the information. So again, if you're not finding a lot of good information, then just try a different topic because I'm sure you'll be able to find information about somebody else. Make sure you get enough information to talk for several minutes. Like, um, you need to talk for at least a couple minutes. 2, 3, even 4 minutes. So please make sure you get enough information. Okay. This should not be like just a couple sentences long. This has to be quite long to be able to talk for a long time. Um, the next step would be to make slides after you do all this other stuff, and then practice what you're going to say several times, because remember, like, part of the final grade is your pronunciation fluency. So you got to practice and make sure you've got good pronunciation, and then you're going to record the PowerPoint, and then you're done with the midterm. Alright, so in this video, we're going to finish up Unit 3. Um, just to let you know, the next units of the book. Sorry, I said books, but it's book. The next units of the book are all about history of like specific buildings on the campus, like the library and all this stuff. It can get a little boring. Some of the stuff in the book, like a lot of it's repeating stuff that we learned already, and it's kind of a little bit boring. So I'm gonna try not to make it too long. I want to just hit on the important things or interesting things. Like as I'm reading through the book, I'm looking for things that I think are kind of interesting, and hopefully you will think they're interesting too. But I'm not going to cover everything in the book because some of the stuff is just not interesting. If you want to go through by yourself and read it, then that's fine. But I'm only going to cover stuff that I think is interesting. And then, like before, if there's extra time at the end of the videos, I'm gonna just throw in some culture lessons just to give us something different. Okay. Um, okay. So let's just jump right into it. Um, okay. All right. I'll try to focus on the parts of the chapter that I think are most interesting. I'll skip the parts that were covered already or that are not that interesting. So, one of the first interesting things that I was reading in this book was about the medical science that was available in Korea at the time that the missionaries arrived. I thought that was kind of cool, and I want to share that with you, okay? So, like I said, our book gives some information about what medical science was like in Korea in around 1899. So remember that the first, oh my god, I spelled it wrong, right? Jejungwan, it should be Jung. Sorry, Jejungwan was opened in 1899. When it was the first Jejungwan that was open was just a small room in the church, basically, and you had a couple of the Western doctors working there who were missionaries but also were trained in medicine. Um, at this time, Korean people didn't really know anything about Western medicine. A lot of people believed that sickness was caused by spirits or ghosts and bad luck, and just kind of they were wrong. They were wrong about medicine, and they didn't understand what was really causing people to be sick. They had almost no medical knowledge. All of the medical knowledge they had was like Eastern medicine and weird Chinese remedies. And again, I don't want to attack the knowledge that they had, but um, I think that we can probably agree that while maybe some things were effective at this time, most of the knowledge that they had about medicine was not matching to the knowledge we have now, and some of the things they were doing could also just be hurting people, okay? So at this time, a lot of Chinese medicine remedies were tried, like a bunch of weird stuff, such as like a tiger's tooth might cure one thing, and a frog's skin might cure another thing, and um, interestingly, a lot of this stuff is still used in China these days, and we can see now coronavirus. One theory is that coronavirus was caused by um, this Chinese medicine stuff because they're keeping a lot of strange animals in one place, and they had bats and all these weird animals, and that caused coronavirus to spread, and it caused SARS in the past to spread. So we know now that some of these strange medicine remedies that require a lot of unique animals can cause diseases in humans, and it's really bad for us. Also, at that time, there were also a lot of fake doctors who were saying they could cure people because a lot of people were sick from, like I mentioned before in a previous video, leprosy, and like there's a special type of flu called measles that was very common at this time as well. And if you got that as a child, you were almost 100% gonna die. So it was a very tough time for people, and a lot of bad people would trick others and try to take money and do all these weird remedies. So um, over time, people begin to trust the Western medicine, and also a lot of young Koreans came to the Jejungwon and were learning how to do proper medicine. So it was a really good influence, and it helped people's lives to improve a lot. Okay. All right. So the rest of Unit 3 is all about Dr. Shin Tae-shik. Okay. He was the first Korean president of KMU, and it's not mentioned anywhere in the book, but I'm pretty sure that he is the father of our current president of the school. Although I don't know this for sure, and I'm not sure if this is a secret or whatever. I really don't know, but pretty sure that he is. But again, I'm not 100% sure. Anyway, I didn't know anything about him, but after reading the book, he had a pretty interesting life. He sounds like a really He sounds like he was a very intelligent man. So let's learn about him, okay? So again, so Shin Tae-shik was the man that took over as president of KMU after Park Chung-hee made Edward Adams step down as president of the school. So we learned previously that Edward Adams, along with the help of many other people, created KMU, and there was the first foreign president of the school, and then a little bit later, Edward Adams took over and was serving as president of the school, and then Park Chung-hee took over Korea, and he did not want foreigners to be in charge of large organizations in Korea. So he said that every foreigner who is the leader of a school or organization should step down. And Edward Adams did, and the person that took over was Shin Tae-shik. Okay, but who was he? So let's learn about him. He was born in 1909 in Cheongsong. I'm not really sure where that is, but in Gyeongsangbuk-do. Okay, so Cheongsong, Gyeongsangbuk-do. I should have looked this up on a map actually, but I don't know. If you know where Cheongsong is, tell me about it, maybe. Okay, I'll look it up later after this lesson. His family became close to James Adams, who is Edward Adams' father. Okay, because James Adams established a church in this area, and his family became Christian at this time. So Shin Tae-shik's father was very moved by Christianity and became a devout Christian and became a pastor, I believe. And he influenced his son to also, and his whole family and many people in this area to become Christian as well. So Mr. Shin Tae-shik's father converted to Christianity and influenced his son, Mr. Shin, to be a good Christian as well. As a boy, he entered the Kaesung school in Daegu as a student. So remember that the Kaesung school was a kind of middle and high school that was made by James Adams, Edward Adams' father, and this was uh, one of the first schools in Korea that was a Christian school. They also taught English there, so I think the students there were getting a good education that was not possible in other parts of Korea at that time because they learned English and they learned about Christian values. They learned Western science and a lot of cool stuff, even though it was just elementary, middle, and high school. Okay, so as we know, Japanese occupation happened, and slowly over time, Japan uh, made life more and more difficult for Korean people. Um, but the Kaesung School was still open at this time. Um, the book gives us some details about what the Japanese were doing, but we don't know exactly like how strict they were. Um, for instance, in the book I read that it was not until 1939 that the Japanese said that Korean people cannot study Korean anymore. So it seems like, you know, obviously the Japanese were causing a lot of trouble for Korean people, but as far as it seems to me, again, I'm not an expert of this, but maybe at first they let Korean people kind of live their lives at least a little bit similar to how they had lived before, but slowly, things just got worse and worse and worse and worse, and their freedom was reduced more and more and more until it seemed like 1939 was when things got the most serious because they started to say that Korean people could not study Korean anymore and they had to follow the religion of Japan and all that stuff. So, anyway. So again, we don't know exactly what was happening in Kaesong School at this time in 1930, but we assume that they were still learning Christian values and he learned English and things like that. Okay, so he graduated the Kaesong School in 1930, and then he entered Songshir University. So remember that this was in Pyongyang at this time. It was not in Seoul. So he moved to Pyongyang and studied at Songshil University. It doesn't actually say what he was studying, but I believe he was probably studying like Christian, like maybe like Christian theology, right? And English as well, because he eventually taught English. So, not exactly sure what he studied, but I think it was also maybe law as well. Law, English, things like that. But as far as I couldn't really find exactly what his major was. Okay, so anyway, after he graduated from Songshir University, he went to graduate school in Japan, and he studied at Tohoku Imperial University. Um, I had never heard of it, but actually I looked it up, and at right now it's the top university in Japan. It's like the Harvard of Japan, so um, that's cool. He was obviously a really smart man, Mr. Dr. Shin Tae-shik. So very intelligent guy. You know, at a time when not many people went to university, he went to one of the best universities in Korea and then the best university in Japan, and you know, very impressive life. So actually, because it was a we had kind of talked about this before, like what exactly was Christian life for Koreans during the Japanese occupation of Korea, and I told you I was not exactly sure, but we had a little more information here. We learned that Songshil University was actually forced to close in 1936 because Sungshu University at this time was a Christian university, and like we said, the Japanese were getting worse and worse and worse about what they were forcing Koreans to do, and so they said that Koreans could not be Christian anymore, and they were forced to change their religion to Shintoism. So this caused the school to close, and like I guess the foreigners that were working there left at this time as well. Uh, so that's a really big deal. I didn't know that that happened before. So again, I wish I had more information. I would love to talk to like an expert who really uh, knows what was happening at this time, or I guess I should try to find a book about it. But again, I apologize that I don't know too much about this topic, but I'm trying my best to share with you guys. And if anybody knows a lot about this topic and they want to share with me, then I can share with the other students as well. Okay. So anyway, he graduated from Tohoku University. Uh, so he was very well educated, and he had the chance to be a professor. He could have been a professor in Japan, or he could have been a professor at a university in Korea. But he decided to just come back to the Kaesung School to teach English, which was probably he could have had a more respectable position than just working at this you know elementary, middle, and high school. But he really had a sense of duty to the people that had helped him before. So the Kaesung School had really affected his life in a positive way. So instead of just becoming a professor at university, he wanted to come back to the Kaesung School and help the people, the students there, and teach them English. So, I mean, really, that was really great as well. Like, he's obviously has a sense of duty and volunteer spirit, because he didn't care about glory or money. He just wanted to do what was the right thing to do. So that was really great that he did that. Now, at this time, World War II was going on, and most Americans had left the country. So remember that Edward Adams, we're going to learn later, but Edward Adams and Mr. Shin Tae-shik, Dr. Shin Tae-shik, were great friends, actually, because their fathers had both been friends, and Edward Adams was very involved with the Kaesung School. So they developed a really strong friendship and working relationship. And Edward Adams tried to stay in Korea even during World War II, which was extremely dangerous because Japanese were at war with Americans, and many Americans were killed by the Japanese and tortured. So it's very dangerous to be in Korea at that time as an American. But he was eventually caught by the Japanese. Remember, we learned this in a previous video. But for whatever reason, they released him and let him go back to America. I don't know. I don't know why. I guess he was lucky. But as we know, eventually the Japanese were defeated following the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. I don't want to put too much of my own opinion in this video because it's not really important, but I just think that a lot of people criticize this decision, right? They say that the Americans were kind of evil because they dropped such a terrible bomb on these two cities. But I think studying history, we can see that even though it was a terrible weapon, um, bombing these two cities did end World War II very quickly, and it caused the Japanese to leave Korea. So, at the same time, even though it was a very deadly weapon that we used during this time, I think um, I would have to say that it was the right thing to do. Okay, because it saved a lot of lives and it stopped us from entering Japan in a land war, which I think would have killed way more people. If we had to actually like send all our troops into Japan, we probably would have completely destroyed the whole country. So um, these two cities had to pay the price of starting a war with the rest of the world. Okay, Japan and Germany were very bad for trying to start a war with the whole world. Okay, anyway. All right, in 1945, the Japanese were defeated, so they started to leave Korea. But we might not think about it too deeply, but you had to understand that almost every organization at this time, so almost every school and university and company, they all had a Japanese person who was um, kind of running things. Like a Korean person was usually not allowed to be the main boss or the principal at a school, so they all had like a Japanese principal who was checking everything. Who knows how much the Japanese principal cared? Like, so at this time, Kaesung School had a Japanese principal. The book doesn't give too many details, but I have no idea if that Japanese principal actually cared about the school or if they were really trying to run things. Probably during World War II, I guess, even Kaesung School, they had to be studying Japanese and were not learning Korean or Christian things. I don't really know, but that's my guess. But anyway, all of the Japanese kind of ran away. So it left a lot of companies and schools and organizations with no leadership.